thank you so much for taking the time. I know there's a lot going on, but I have to say how much I appreciate when you step out of your day-to-day and prioritize important things that could potentially not only change the future of us and us women in this room, but also the future of our daughters, the next gender. So thank you for taking the time and prioritizing this today. So in the line of pretty much about stereotyping, about I would say uncautious a lot of the time stereotyping that's happening in our society. My first question is that how do you see that equality in our region? And probably I start with Racha, just because I want to really understand within the media industry or within our tech and media industry, how do you see gender equality is building up, or is it there? And some of the things or examples that you think potentially is, maybe there are signs that we don't have that at the moment and we're still facing an issue. I just hear from your end, how would you deal with those as a CEO of an agency, which is run mostly by a lot of men? How do you have a voice in that industry?
Well, first of all, it's such a pleasure to be with in such good company of men and women, and obviously the company with Aida. This is a really, really good question. Do I see an improvement within our industry? The answer is yes. If I am to compare it to what's the benchmark that you're starting with? If you're looking at how our industry was 10, 15 years ago, then the answer is yes. There are much more women representation than we've had in the past. I can certainly speak for the brand that I work for. If I look at it from a global perspective, 70% of leadership are actually women. It's not the other way around. So this is from a Starcom stance, obviously. If I look at it from a regional stance, I think that the conversations, and also just looking at the data that also was presented earlier, is there a rise in awareness of the importance of having diversity and representation in the industry? The answer is yes. Is there enough that is being done? The answer is no. However, I think part of solving for any challenge is acknowledging that there is a challenge and there is something that we need to work towards. And I think this is really an onus to the organizations that we work with, in understanding that the only way for them to remain relevant, to sustain, to drive growth, to maximize impact is for them not to just acknowledge at this point in time, but actually to take action. And the action is not necessarily, it doesn't have to be something perfect, but you need to have a pledge towards what are you working. And have an open invitation with everyone that's working within the organization to help them understand, to drive advocacy and awareness of why this is an important discussion for us to have. Why are we even still talking about this in the 21st century, and at this time and age, you'd think, right? But if Sally, you presented like incredible stories and a lot of great statistics, but it's because a lot of these stories haven't been told. It's because we have also in our industry, a lot of the drop-off happens at the middle management layer, And the middle management layer is the time where young women are probably thinking about, either settling in or they want to start a family, or what their priorities, just their life priorities completely changed. Women do have a biological clock, men don't. For example, if they do want to start a family. These are just natural realities of life, right? And I think that this is where corporate policies and the conversations on how we drive equity and inequality and makes a huge difference. And I'm glad that we're having a lot of and engaging in these conversations right now. So I think that from my perspective is a positive thing.
That's great.
Positive movement.
Amazing. Aida, how do you see things happening on a larger scale, I guess, across the industries and?
Obviously, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you to the audience. I think both Racha and I were we were literally nodding our heads every time Sally was saying something, because we either lived it or we're living it, and we continuously do live in it right now. 100% agree with what Racha has said. I represent, the government and mainly in the tourism and hospitality sector, and very recently the economy as well. One aspect of what we've realized in this particular area, and I guess you could say it's in general in the corporate world, is whilst there's an increase, it's not as substantial as we'd like for it to be, right? And there's a lot of biases around the hospitality sector in general, right? Do you have to serve alcohol? Do I need to be around men? And so these cultural nuances also hold back a lot of people to move forward into what they could potentially be as well. So it's not like you can't equate getting a job to having a career, and those are two separate different things. And in the travel and trade and tourism hospitality industry, there's been an expansive approach towards cultural appropriation, diversification, a lot of equity building as well. Because let's face it, we've all said it in various different ways. Men and women, we keep saying men and women because we are different. We're not built equally, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally. But we need to realize that when it comes to the processes and policies, there is a lot of equality in it, and it needs to be standardized. But when it comes to building somebody into being somebody into a C-level, suite level, or whatever it is, building their career, there needs to be an equity division that needs to be driven. So we don't have the same needs and wants. And, you mentioned, Farima, even simple things like, a pumping room. I was told to go to a prayer room to pump, and I had an electric pump, and they said, oh, we don't have a switch there. So even simple things like this, it's a small notion. It doesn't have anything to do. It didn't hinder from me delivering my work or even feeding my baby at the end of the day. But simple things like this actually make a difference. And so the more women you have in these areas, in these corporate areas, makes a big difference in thought process, creativity, diversity, and of course, economic impact, as Racha mentioned. So, yes.
It's funny, sorry, just to say, just on something that you said, didn't you feel that you almost have something to prove to yourself? When you were talking about pumping in a prayer room, when there was just no fuse, and I think there's a psychological thing where women always feel that they need to work twice as hard to do everything,
But I think it also goes back to the point where if you make enough noise, it's either you make a noise one time or multiple times or big enough, right? So it either falls into one of these categories, something will change. And the good thing about where we work is that there is a level of equality and equity combined, right? It's at 50-50 where we are leveling up to make sure that we do have a percentage that makes sense for everybody. So just as much as we celebrate Mother's Day, we also celebrate Father's Day. We literally started celebrating Father's Day last year because the men in the organization really felt that they were taking a back seat. And guess who suggested, a woman suggested putting together Father's Day, because that's the level of thought that we had as well. So again, it's making sure that you have those processes, policies, and procedures in place, and not just having it and keeping it there because you can say, oh my God, I've achieved the diversity percentage, but being consistent, coherent, and clear about maintaining that, right? And constantly revising and constantly looking at people and saying, this is what I need to do for my people, and this is what I need to do in order to grow my business or whatever your end goal is at the end of the day.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. And in terms of I love that Father's Day example as well. Like we forget that we also need to promote the side of men that also as
Movembers and
all
of that.
We celebrate Movember as well, by the way.
Same, we do that too.
Because I'm sure there are fathers, and I know a lot of fathers are in this room also that have to juggle between work and family, and it's as important. It's the same thing exactly. And which takes me to the next question, which is about gender bias. It's a very hard one to define, right? Because we say we're different as women and men, and then we say that there is gender bias around us at all times. I mean, Sally's great examples really clarifies what do we mean by gender bias. The fact that women in history are not mentioned enough, 25% was the stat missing, or they're linked to another person when we introduce them. Oh, that's the wife of, that's the, there are little things that we don't notice them. And we probably even as women do them on a daily basis without noticing, because reality is, I don't think a lot of men out there are purposely doing this, are saying, we're going to just do this just so we're biased towards you. A lot of it is unconscious bias. Yeah. So just for everyone's a little bit of knowledge, what are some of those that you've experienced in your career that you can probably...
Racha, I'm glad that you're dying to talk first.
No, Racha, no. Racha goes first.
What have I experienced in my career that was gender bias? Look, I think that the honest answer is, I'm sure many. But I'll just tell you just the mindset, at least, that I've always had, because I'm one of 5 girls. So I was raised in a, by a, in the 80s, father that, wanted to raise very assertive young women, and he was very proud of that. You spoke about boys don't cry. So I was raised with a father who says girls don't cry. The girls express themselves. Say how you feel. Talk. Give your opinion. It was so important for him that that me and my sisters had an opinion, and whether we agreed or didn't, it just didn't really matter. It was an opinion. So that is the culture that I was raised in. So the question really becomes: was there any sort of bias in my experience throughout the job? I'm sure there is. The reason I keep on saying I'm sure there is, but I can't really think of anything, because I think my mindset has always been that if it's the bias, it's coming from someone else. It doesn't really it doesn't define me. It's you. You are biased. So when it happens, I speak about it. I obviously put forward my perspective and my point of view, or I probably raise it to that person's consciousness in case they're doing it, it's in a, subconsciously. They're not necessarily consciously being biased. But I think my mindset has always been that, it is not necessarily my problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It is a conversation to be had with that person, but then you just stay focused on what you want to actually drive and remain true to who you want to be. And for sure, I think, again, I speak of my personal experience. I feel a lot of the times that I've had a lot of challenges, they were much more internal focused challenges that I've had self-inflicted because of culture, because you want to prove yourself, because you work so hard, because you want that growth, because you want that next promotion, because you deserve it. You want it and you deserve it. But also, I think what is really important for young men and women, but women in particular, because of the whole representation, is to be confident enough to say what you want. Don't be afraid to say, well, you know what, this is what I'm working towards, and find those allies to help you get there, wherever they are. And the allies, by the way, are at work, but they're also in your personal space. It's who you marry, who your partner is, who you choose to surround yourself around. And then you take it one day at a time after you do that.
Agree.
I know I didn't answer your question directly, but that's really been my personal experience. Of course, there's been a lot of when I got married, for example, and someone was like, oh, are you planning to have kids? And someone was like, no, she's definitely not going to have kids now. We've got a lot going on. I know it must have been just like a thing. Yeah. But, if I really took that to heart, you wouldn't want to hear that. Yeah. But it wasn't intentionally because that person was like, I'm going to make her feel bad. It was just, it's a cultural thing. We just joke around. Female men jokes, ha ha ha, very funny. And I'd be like, ha ha ha, it's not. I'm not laughing.
Casual.
I'm not laughing, but you put everything in context, right? For me, it's very important to put everything in context, because especially in Dubai, because it's such a diverse and cosmopolitan place, right? And different people have different experiences, different backgrounds, different cultures at home, different cultures in nationalities and whatever it is. Put everything in context, and that in a way kind of, in Arabic we say بتحجم القصص, like you exactly, you give it its size, and it stops impacting you. You just say, well, it's a small little thing, and I'm here, and I'm going to look at it like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And solve for it from the top, not solve for it being kind of stuck.
But I think talking about standing up and kind of clarifying helps as well, because again, it's unconscious, right? So I have an example that, my child was small and we were all sitting in a meeting room and discussing, and everyone said, oh yeah, you have to go home, right? Because you can go, because you have to go look after your child and put him to bath. And,
of course.
And this is a really important meeting that determines a lot of decision making that, and I looked around and I said, no, I don't actually have to go. In fact, I do have to go, but you all have to go.
Yes.
Because you can't continue, and a lot of you are fathers as well. So you can't continue making really important decisions. I'm the only one who needs to go, right? So you don't... True. So I'm sure no one in that meeting room thought, oh, we're not going to make decisions behind her back. But it was kind of like, you need to be a mother. We need to make decisions quick, right? And it's like, no, it can wait.
Yeah.
Let's meet back at 8 o'clock when my child is asleep and your children are asleep. Did you have any examples that?
Oh my God. So girly as I might look right now, once upon a time I was a tomboy. And I actually used to fight on behalf of my brothers who were younger than me. My mom actually used to introduce me when people would say, oh, mashallah, you have, you know, a girl and 2 boys. And she'd say, I have 3 boys. This is before my youngest sister was born. Because and it wasn't because I identified more, it's just, this was who I am. You know, some people are born into or have a personality that basically just defines what they want to do in life, right? And which is taking charge. And you can be the CEO of your own life. You don't have to be a CEO of in an organization, but you need to be a CEO of your life, right? Which is the taking charge part. And have you guys watched this movie, Inventing Anna? Okay, yeah. Not about her. It's not about her. It's about one of the characters said, if you let your emotion take over you, you become a character in somebody else's story. So there have been plenty of times where I was subjected to 3 main types of discrimination. One for being young. I graduated from university when I was 20, started my first job when I was 20. Because the school system wasn't adjusted then, so I think you could just go to school at like 3 or 2, or I don't even know what happened back then. We didn't have a KHDA. Number 2, because I'm Emirati, okay? I don't walk around with a blue passport on my forehead, okay? So it's basically undermining that you're skillful or that you probably are just doing the job, but you actually have a rich oil field and a camel in your backyard, okay? And then the third point is actually more from family, but I think a lot of people have that mentality as well, is that you always have to do the right thing. لازم تقومين بالواجب. You have to do your obligations, right? And so those 3 different types of discrimination have come in various different parts of my career. And I've sat on tables, you know, with men on a full table where I was the only female. I was the only female. I was the only Emirati, and I was the youngest one. So you're like, okay, do I need to answer to you, or do we need to answer to the question together? So yes, discrimination is still there. There is a lot of gender bias that is happening in there, but you know, I think after a while, if you stop internalizing that bias, it stops becoming your notion of what people think of you. The more we talk about it and acknowledge it, that becomes your reality. So I don't believe in gender biasness for myself. I've got 2 boys, and we talked about this as well, and Rasha's got a boy and a girl. Yeah. And for me, it's about the skill set, it's about the duties and the tasks and responsibilities. So if the house is dirty, if I made a mess, I will clean it up. Not because I'm the woman and I'm the mommy, but if you made a mess with your toys, you clean it up, you pick it up. You know, just because you have a nanny doesn't mean she has to pick it up, right? So because that role transfer or that responsibility transfer automatically starts making people think from a young age, we need to segregate the roles of what gender bias is all about. So yes, I face it. I still face it until today, and you know, in different ways. Sometimes it's very undercut. You know, I casually put in a comment or a question. You know, like, how was your holiday after I came back from maternity leave? It wasn't a holiday.
I know, yeah,
I brought a human to the world. How is that a holiday? Would you like a C-section? No. It's not nice, you know? It's a proper surgery. You know? Got the 7 layers, well, 7 layers of skin, you know? Recovery time. They're like, oh, 9 months to make one, 9 months to recover. No, it's not 9 months. No, it's not. So, yeah, gender bias does exist. I wasn't on holiday. I haven't been on holiday since I gave birth. And so I just want to make it very clear. And we're still standing, you know? We're still making waves, and we're still talking, and we're breaking barriers every single day, right? So take it every day at a time, as Rasha said.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think another thing, a lot of our women, when we discuss in between us, that pops up and comes, you know, kind of become an issue that is kind of internal, as you said. You kind of need to make peace here and empower yourself here and really think, who do you think you are, really? Is actually dealing with imposter syndrome, right? You both lead in your industry, and I'm sure there would be multiple examples where, as you were obviously going, you know, becoming more of a face of your company or becoming a leader in that, sort of industry. You felt that maybe through those experiences. How did you feel it? Or did you see other women in your organization feel it? And what's your advice for women?
Oh, I've had a couple of horrible female bosses. Horrible. Just horrible.
Yeah.
Full stop. But I think, the reality of things are, it boils down to what you want to put out to the world, right? I mean, I'm not going to be here for a while. I've been in a couple of industries as well. It's what do you want to leave as a legacy at the end of the day? Do you want to be known as someone who, took charge by, being the aggressive one or being the female one? No, you want to be known as a leader in your industry, right? And again, I think what I want to break away is from the narrative of like, is it a gender related thing or is it a diversity related thing? I think it's a human related thing at the end of the day. So yes, you will always face it. And I run a team, a combined team of over 29 people. And they are a lot of young people as well. And so when you reach a certain level, they tend to not realize that this imposter syndrome actually comes across in so many different ways in so many different areas. And so it's our job to teach and to give back. So that's kind of the legacy that I want to leave. I don't want to leave them with, and so they need to realize that this is out there. We've come to the point, I think, that we realize that it's out there. Yeah. So we're able to recognize it within seconds or within minutes or whatever. But it's for somebody else that doesn't recognize that there is an imposter syndrome. So I think that's the legacy that I want to leave. It's recognizing that it's there and acknowledging it. And you choose, do you want to let it go? Do you want to address it head on? Some things really don't need to be addressed head on, right? You can just let it go because, again, it goes back to the point that we said, the more you internalize it, it becomes your reality. Yeah. So, you can be an imposter all you want, Yeah,
100%. Yeah. You end up modeling what you want to be at the end of the day, right? I'm a firm believer in that. Yeah. Going back to, you have to define who are you, who are you as a person? If you're very clear in your mind who you are as a person, I think everything else becomes, as I said, you see everything from a macro perspective, and then you kind of look down at everything. You remove yourself emotionally from the situation, and you're able to think in a much more, like, I don't say like rational, but in a wise way as well. Because it's not just about being rational. You need to have that bit of wisdom as well. That I think is really, really important at the same time. But it's funny when we were talking about kids, and because again we were sharing some stories, but. My daughter, Layla, is 5, and a couple of weeks ago, they had World Book Day at school. And the teacher obviously shares all these pictures of what's happening in class, and there's my little Layla, dressed in her costume, because they have to dress her favorite character, and she's dressed in Paw Patrol, and she chose to be Marshall. And then her dad was like, Papi, why are you Marshall? You can be, why don't you want to be Sky? Sky is like, she travels, she flies, she's got wings. She's like, she's got no superpowers, Daddy. I want to be Marshall. I want to lead the pack, And it's funny because she was standing there with her little book, and all the girls in her class were like fairies and princesses, and there was my Layla, in her little book, with her little book and her little mask, and she's standing there, and I'm like, that's my girl, that's my girl, But it's funny because it's the same thing when we talk about how you raise boys and girls. Because with my son, it's the same thing, So when we have that conversation, he'll always tell me like, what matters is character, Mommy. Like, I know Kung Fu Panda, the panda's the strong one, but the tiger, she's the smart one. Like, I'd rather be her. Yeah. And it's not because he's identifying with her as a male or female. He's 9, and even though whatever it is, but the idea is that he's identifying with the characteristic of the, and and what the character actually represents.
True.
And language then really starts to matter at home or even in the workplace. Yeah, working parent versus working mom. Absolutely. No one calls my husband a working dad. You know what I mean? I don't go around going like, great, well done, working dad.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all this wonderful conversation. I just wanted to actually invite Sally and Priya, if you don't mind, to join us on stage. Thank you. We just want to spend the next 5-10 minutes really just opening it to audience, to our women ERG who are here and supporting this, today's conversation, and really just hear from you. Any questions for our keynote presenters or panelists? We've got a few amazing women and very inspiring, figures in our industry. So Please, if anyone has any questions, if you come forward, that'll be great.
Not all of you at once, huh? Please.
But it's rather about saying my merit was pretty much what got me where I am, and this is amazing. That's all I wanted to say.
So I think Snap does a lot as a company to meet these things and address these things. So what would be the one thing in your career that a company has done or you've implemented at a company that you think has made a real difference?
I'd say one of the things that we've been trying to do is fundamental to changing the conversation is being very cognitive of our choice of words and language. Small little things matter a lot, you know. I remember there was this guy in my team whose wife chose to be, you know, a mom. She just wants to, not just to be a mom, as in she doesn't necessarily have a career. So that was her personal choice. And we would always joke that 2 weeks, I mean, he's got leaves, right? And he would give her also just her leave days because he recognized the fact that, you know, she deserves that time off. And the joke would always be that, you know, it's Priya's time off. Her name was Priya. So Priya's time off. And we would just kind of sign that leave for him as well to spend more time with his family. That's not the point, though. The point was that and that was like many, many years ago, but the idea was we made it a thing to say that it was Ravi's time to step up, and that is what he's actually doing. The same thing that we talk about what women are actually trying to do. So I think shifting conversation, shifting the mindset becomes really, really important. How you talk and how you celebrate and how you create that psychological safety of acceptance that you can just be, and that is okay, is I think fundamental to how we're trying to slowly start to shift culture. You know, internally. That's, I think, that what I would say has been really, really key. Because the more that you hear something, the more you sort of believe it, and it just becomes the norm, right?
I think it was in 2018, we rolled out a policy that working moms could get 2 days out of the month to just do whatever they wanted to do. It was so successful, so we piloted it for 3 months, and then we piloted it for all the employees. And now it's become a policy that you can have 2 working days per week to actually be at home. And then the additional stuff that we did as well is for every celebration, if it's direct, so your parents, your husband and your children, you're able to take 3 hours off either in the morning or 3 hours off earlier. For any special occasions, we recently celebrated International Women's Day, like everybody else. Although every day it is International Women's Day. So yeah, we all the women got to go out, and we had a really nice celebration, and then the rest of the day was off. So the policy is there, but it's like the small things that build up to actually make sure that it's there, that it actually supports that policy. So it's not just words, it's actually talking the talk rather than saying, okay, why don't we? And so this was based on a survey and understanding, and then the additional thing I have to say though, in the last 6 months, there have been at least 40 women who have been promoted into mid-management level at Dubai Tourism. Yeah, 40% of the overall total there.
So I think at Unilever, one of the, and again, something. So I was just looking at some global data today, and I know you mentioned 70% are women. That's amazing. At Unilever today, we are 52% women, mid and senior management, 52% versus 48% men. So it's been, and in our region, because this is one of the very sensitive regions for Unilever globally, and there's always been a lot of focus. And we've actually moved our numbers from across MENA. I think in 2010, 2012, it was at 12%, and it's now moved up to about 38%. UAE, we are at about 42% women in mid and senior management. But there's a lot of work that has happened, that has gone behind it, a lot of commitment by senior leadership, a lot of target setting. I know there's a lot of questions, especially from the male colleagues, saying, are you promoting women only because of targets and numbers? And no, the conversation that we always have is around performance. It's always been very clear. But I think what is very interesting is last year we introduced a menstrual leave policy. Yeah, this is not a conversation that happens. Yeah. And whenever women need to take that day off at that point in the month, they have to make up 100 excuses. Yeah, it's about whatever, you got to be shy about asking for that leave. And we just thought we had to bring this conversation forward. Yeah, make it the norm. Yeah, and we've been very, we've talked about it in social media. We're very proud of the fact we're pushing it, and we're very clear, women can take this leave, no questions asked. And you say, I'm putting in menstrual leave. Of course, it's not as simple as just introducing it. We're also trying to see how many women are actually taking that leave. So we're tracking, we're encouraging women. We're saying, take that leave. Yeah. So I think that's a big one, and we really want to try and break that bias and start those conversations. So I think that's a good one that we introduced in our region last time.
Interesting. Thank you.
One of the biggest ones. I love that you just said that.
That is just hands down the best thing that was said today.
The lining of your uterus is literally clawing itself out of your body once every single month, and you feel like you're dying. I don't know, I feel like that on the first couple of days, and we have to power away, right? So this is amazing. I love that. And I just want to, before we take more questions, there's a couple of comments to what you guys have been saying. Amazing. Like, just thank you for all of that. Like, Racha, what you were saying about, we can't internalize the biases that get thrown at us. Because when you are a woman, when you're an immigrant from the Middle East and whatever, you have so many biases being thrown in your direction. You have to be a freaking superwoman to overcome all of the obstacles and the challenges. So it's literally built into your psyche, isn't it? I mean, I felt what you were saying. You just don't think like that. You don't have the space to process what people are trying to throw in your direction, because you have to prove yourself 10 times more than the other people around you just to feel like that you belong in that place. And what you were saying about, my God, maternity leave and the holiday. Let's just like really, we have to understand this. Like, there is no such thing as a non-working mother. Every mother works. Mothers who are at home do unpaid work, which is lifting up all of society. Listen to any man who's very honest about this. Who knows Quincy Jones? One of the greatest musicians and producers in the world, one of my favorites. Watched the documentary about him the other day on Netflix. And he said in this, he said, my wife, Peggy Lipton, she left her career to take care of our kids so that I could do what I did for him to become a legend. There's another incredible book everyone should read. It's called The Startup Wife. Fantastic. Tackles all of this. It's so racy and fantastic by Tamima Anam, brilliant writer. Hopefully that's going to be a Netflix series as well. But amazing book, talks all about this stuff as well. But thank you for sharing that, because it's so important. So thank you.
Can I just share one other thing? I was talking to you about the Unstereotype Alliance. Unilever is one of the largest advertisers, right, globally. We, of course, have our internal. Yeah, you have to start with your workplace. You've got to meet that commitment and ensure you're doing it internally. But what we also do externally is that we try and ensure that we are pushing our partners, so clients and our agencies and production houses, to ensure that they are using a lot of female talent to produce our ads. So Lux, for instance, in this region, I think for their advertising, they now have their agencies, production houses, creative partners, for all their films, 100% women. So, you've got to use the power that you have to also drive that change externally.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for sharing all this wonderful learnings, honestly. Like, for all of us, we could replicate a lot of those learnings. I'm just cautious of time. I want to take Lamis, hi.
I just have a comment. Recently at LinkedIn, we just introduced the career breaks. So speaking of motherhood, this is amazing because a mother can take 2 years off to take care of her family and just mention it on her profile that she has done, like she has taken a career break, and include all the soft skills that she acquired, because a mother, like motherhood is really a full-time job.
Yeah. Good one.
So I just wanted to update you on this.
That's a really nice one, actually. Really good one.
We don't have any other questions. Oh, Yara.
Still think that we need an International Women's Day? Isn't it counterintuitive to the gender equality discussion?
No, we don't need one. So just on that point, and this is food for thought, right? I always think when you leave, you need to start recognizing certain things. And I always tell people you need to learn 3 things after you've exited, you've had this session. You need to do 3 things that are completely different. I'll only ask you to do 1 thing today. So this is my 1 thing that I'm doing today. Actually, this is my 2nd thing that I'm doing different today, but this is my first thing to you guys. I need you to start recognizing the differences that are out there. The minute you step out, just go to the gift shop store. Girl toy, boy toy. Girl toy is much more expensive than a boy toy. The Gap, H&M, whatever, boy section, girl section. Same t-shirt, double the price. Same t-shirt, quarter the price. When you spoke about the gender pay gap, women get paid less, but we're asked to pay more. So start noticing these things, because the differentiator is not just having these conversations, it's actually noticing that these things and making enough noise about it, because why should it be different? Are the parts made out of gold and diamond that we don't know about?
The same shavers.
Yeah,
same shavers. Go to the shaving section in the supermarket. The exact same shavers. Way more expensive for women than for men.
It's the ad. I'm your Venus.
All right.
It's all in the ad, I'm telling you.
Sorry, and I just wanted to reply. I shook my head when you say, isn't it counterintuitive? But I have to say, it's conversations like this, right, that actually get you thinking. Yeah, it gets the conversation started. And I think it is important. And all the events that I've been to, I think one of the things everybody has said, Sally, including the SDG 5, is that we should make every day International Women's Day. Yes, true. But I think we need that focus. We need to ensure that we're continuing that conversation. Yeah. And the other thing that I want to leave with is that, at least at Unilever, we've now started driving the conversation beyond diversity and inclusion. Can anybody say where?
Where?
It's on equity now.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's very important that you understand the concept of equity. Equity is understanding that everybody has different requirements. Yeah. The concept of inclusion is that, okay, I'll open the door to everybody, but equity is recognizing not everybody has the same skill sets to race through that door at the same time. Yeah. So we've got to ensure that the people who don't have that skill set do receive that extra help, that extra support to be able to perform. Yeah. So I think it's very important, and that's how this is the change that is happening. Otherwise, the last year, we were just talking about diversity and inclusion. But we at Unilever have now started talking about equity. And this is very important when our male counterparts ask us, but the focus is always on women. Yes, the focus is on women because it's not a balanced state. You've got to understand that women are not treated as equal. Until we reach that space, we've got to continue that conversation. We've got to keep moving that baseline. We've got to keep pushing. So I think it's important that we keep having these conversations and we keep changing that mindset, because even diversity and inclusion is not enough anymore. Yeah. We've now got to start talking about equity. How can we make each other equitable? How can we start providing support to those people who don't have it anymore?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Do you have one last one?
Add to that? That was super important. And just like, adding to kind of the point, okay, what do we do now? Can I just say, I love the fact that we have men at this event. That is so vitally important. I don't want to be having women-only events anymore. We need to be hearing from each other. At the SDG 5 Summit, we had a panel with men talking about you know, how they see the situation, how they see the problem, what they could be doing, what they could be doing more of. So that's amazing. So thank you for doing that. Amazing, fantastic. But also let's start kind of, like you said, Aida, noticing these biases that happen, particularly, you know, when you're looking at cross-sectional, you know, intersectional biases as well between different cultures. And what I wore the hijab for 18 years, and I can tell you, without the shadow of a doubt, I was treated differently and not given the same opportunities when I was wearing the hijab. As soon as I took it off, I was offered things that I was like, this is insane. And so I spent, and I still spend so much of my time standing up for Muslim women who are visibly Muslim, because it is so vital. Across the world, we see the examples. They are being excluded on multiple levels just for looking Muslim, just for wearing a hijab. They just want to be who they are. They want to play football. They want to get into sport. They want to be part of society. They want education. Stop calling them oppressed when you are standing in their way. Right? So just please notice where this is happening and be part of the solution. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, Feems. I just have one thing to say from a male representation side of things. First of all, this is my first women's session. All you ladies on the stage spoke from the heart, and it reached my heart. And I promise from this day onwards, I'll attend more of these, listen to more podcasts around. So thank you very much.